All right. Do we have quorum? Is that right? Can we start?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, welcome to the February 13th, 2023 meeting of the East Bay Community Energy Community Advisory Committee. Can the clerk please take roll and establish quorum?
Yes, thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Hugh.
Here.
Member Liu.
Present.
Member Swaminathan.
Here.
Member Lakshman. Member Lakshman. Member Talria. Member Talria. Member Pacheco. Member Souza. Member Souza.
I'm here.
Member Carr.
Present.
Member Woods.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Hernandez.
Presente. Present.
Chair Eldridge.
Present.
Member Corp.
All right. Do you have to read any disclaimers or disclosures about today's meeting?
Sure. So we are last one, but absolutely. This Community Advisory Committee meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing and to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. AB 361 suspends some of those rules during a state of emergency where state and local health officials have recommended social distancing. The Brown Act continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. The Community Advisory Committee has met all of the applicable noticing requirements, and the public is welcome to participate in this meeting. If you wish to be recognized during public comment, please fill out a public comment speaker form found at ebce.org/meetings and use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You'll be recognized for 3 minutes. Comments can also be submitted online at ebce.org/meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. All right, so the next agenda item is public comment. And as a reminder, public comment is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. So have we received any written correspondence prior to 5 p.m. yesterday, or there are any members of the public with their hands raised?
We have not received any written public comment, but we have 3 hands raised.
Great.
Okay. Kelly A, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Couple of comments about the energy situation. One is the Valley Link. It's a railroad proposed to go from Dublin to Mountain House. And this one of their main selling points, one of their big features is that they're going to use self-generated energy on 200 acres in Tracy, and they're going to have hydrogen powered and hydrogen storage and hydrogen on-site hydrogen production. This is the most incredibly cutting edge and fanciful energy proposal that exists. For one thing, it's not 200 acres; it's 47 acres of land available for energy production, which they intend to do solar. And if you do the math and look at how much energy they claim to need for their trains, they are only capable of producing a small fraction of the energy that they need on the 47 acres of solar. But nonetheless, they are touting vigorously, selling this insanely unrealistic idea that they can use self-generated energy to run their trains when the laws of energy production say that they can't do it on 47 acres. And I live as a resident of Fremont here in Alameda County. I'd like to direct your attention to one of the most important and most productive energy energy related things that has happened in the last, it's happened right here in Fremont. We have a local company here called a Next Tracker, and what they do is they produce solar tracking devices. And about a week or so ago, they raised an IPO, $600 million, valuing them at $3.5 billion, a Fremont-based company. And this is the biggest IPO in the last 4 or 5 months on NASDAQ. It's a tremendous success. Their shares jumped 20 or 25 or 30% the first day. Right here in Fremont, this is why Fremont likes to say that we're the leaders in advanced manufacturing. It's stuff like this. Now, what makes solar tracking so important? It's kind of like those solar rooftops. Solar rooftops, they produce all their energy at noon or whatever, right? And what these trackers do is they follow the sun, so that even they end up producing maybe about the same amount of power, but they follow the sun such that at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, when the energy is more valuable, they're producing more of it. So that the return on investment and the true value of the energy produced is much higher. This is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. A couple of things. I wanted to know, and Olivia, if you also received my correspondence that was directed to the board of directors. That was a response to Inder Khalsa's letter that she commented on. I think it was at the 12/14 board meeting.
Was it the, I have received some information from you. You're going to have to be more specific,
So
as I've received several correspondences from you.
I wrote to the board and the CAC in response to Inder Khalsa's letter, questioning or challenging Jessica Tovar's letter from December 12th, and also comments that were made by Ms. Khalsa in regard to my statements about a Brown Act violation that was related to the $50 million grant. I'm just trying to make sure that you saw that letter before.
Adrian, can you confirm that I was included as a board member, as actually Ed should have been as well?
Sure, yeah,
as
you
my
would be.
alternate?
Yes, but that letter has not been distributed yet. It will be distributed prior to the meeting.
So, Adrian, I did ask that the letter go to the CAC and the board of directors.
So, Tom, when did you send the letter?
Adrian has the details. He's aware of it.
Okay, we'll visit this and we'll figure out why. I don't want to use up your time here. You asked a question, I'm responding, so I don't want that to reflect negatively on your time.
Yeah.
So we will check that. You can bring that back up to make your comment. You can bring it up to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, or you can just restart it and it's fine. So what's your?
Yeah, the other issue, and just very shortly, is I wanted to just give you a heads up. I've been looking at the joint powers agreement. Well, let me back up. As you know, I have been trying to get the board and the CAC to act on EBCE's failure to beat PG&E on greenhouse gas emissions. One of the primary reasons we even went to the trouble of founding EBCE was to respond to climate change. And as you now know, EBCE's GHGs are about 6 times higher than PG&E's greenhouse gas emissions. And I've been looking at the JPA and also the legislation that was passed by each of the participating jurisdictions. And it's clear that that agreement requires EBCE to do better than PG&E on greenhouse gas emissions. So I just want to give you a heads up on this, because I am frustrated at the board's failure to address this issue, and am looking for other alternatives to try and seek enforcement. And I'll just leave it at that for the moment, but I have sent you and Olivia today just a summary, more or less, of the JPA and individual legislation that demonstrates that GHGs is an obligation that EBCE has to meet in order to continue to function. Thank you.
I did receive that correspondence. Okay, and does that cover it, Tom?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Brendan Pittman, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, Brendan Pittman here, from resident of the city of Berkeley. I spoke at the December 12th, 2022 Community Advisory Board meeting, raised several questions regarding the summary presentation from a ways back on the 2021 load proportional share of generation from PG&E contracted carbon-free resources, primarily related to the nuclear generation aspect. I wasn't able to attend the January community advisory meeting, but I didn't see anything in the minutes about any follow-up to those questions. So I'd just like to repose those and then potentially ask for some follow-up. So yeah, those questions again were related to the November 17th, 2021 summary meeting. And the two questions were, who was the contracting party that tried to move that nuclear generation volume? And could staff provide the reasons why that generation could not be sold, more specifically than they provided in that November 17th meeting? And the second question was, had the board approved that nuclear allocation and folded it into Bright Choice, would ratepayers have saved additional money? And as a follow-up to that second question, I was kind of doing some digging, and it looks like the actual power mix for 2021 included 1.7% nuclear. So my understanding, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, I'm getting caught up to speed, but my understanding was the board rejected any nuclear generation to be included in the power content mix for all plans. So if that was the case, I'm curious where that 1.7% came from. Yeah, and then so my last question is if there's anyone on the staff that I can follow up with offline. I'm happy to do that offline. I'm just trying to get some information on this. That would be great. Otherwise, it would be great to maybe put that on an agenda for a future meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. And just to give you a little bit there, the item will be, we set our agenda based in large part about what is on the board's agenda. And so there are times that that this topic is agendized, and so we tend to discuss it at that point. If you would like to send an email to myself, I can wrap it up with some of the other questions and submit it to like go through our process, because we have one established on how to get folks answers, or whether it'll be discussed at a board meeting or a CAC meeting or something like that. So if you can just email those to me, it would be really helpful. And you can actually email it to Adrian, who can forward it to me, or you can email it to me. Either way is just fine.
Great. Yeah. Please email that to cob@ebce.org. That's cob@ebce.org.
Clerk of the board, COB. Yeah.
Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy February meeting, CAC meeting to everyone. It's been a while since I've been attending EBCE meetings. I hope all is going well. I think the last time I was here was maybe in November or December, when there were issues with Jessica Tovar and her community advocacy group and work that there was a question going on, and I hope we've really worked on those questions, and that Jessica Tovar is really an important example of what community advocacy is for a community process such as EBCE. She adds an awful lot, I mean, an incredible amount, that ideally, I guess, you know, she's got so much weight that, you know, it would be nice if we could more and more people could be a part of the community energy process, because that is our future, is how to create a more and more community involved effort. And it's the work of people like Jessica Tovar, who's, I mean, she's got incredibly good ideas and important leadership qualities in how the future of there can be a more community fact-based process. And she's the person to count on for those fact-based ideas and progressive good ideas that I hope we just really make an effort to want to trust and respect, and good luck in how you're working out those issues. I hope this can be a time I'm going to work on in the next 6 months, I think, how the nuclear process within the BCE can be more accountable and be more open and understandable. And I guess in places like in Berkeley, for places like Berkeley, that there is some question, and for ourselves to learn how to be more open and clear what exactly are our nuclear practices. That's going to be important to me to want to understand and work on. So thanks for that. And with 52 seconds remaining, interestingly, with the really serious earthquake that's happened in southern Turkey and northern Syria, it's reminded myself that I've gone through a lot the past couple of years to understand when we are possibly having an earthquake here in the Bay Area. I was really alarmed by some early statistics from the EBC that I've learned to calm down about and be prepared in good terms. I want to make an effort how we can just comment and note the fact that there's things like HARP at the Arctic pole that really manipulate weather patterns and earthquake fault things that we have to learn how to be acknowledged and be open about, just to make that conversation open and available. I'm going to work on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar, you recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jessica Tovar with East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And well, first I want to thank Blair. We don't know each other, but thank you for all your positive feedback on the comments I have made in past meetings. And excuse me, because I am sick right now. I wanted to just address the issue of the letter by EBC's counsel Inder Khalsa that pretty much was refuting elements in the letter that was sent by East Bay Clean Power Alliance last December. I really would like to see East Bay Community Energy do the right thing and actually really give the transparency that we need to be able to get the information we need from EBCE, but also, y'all to spend more time listening to the community and the energy needs that we're needing and that we have time and time again have brought to these public comment spaces, both at the CAC and the board meeting. And we really need you to take action on them. And, if there is a letter to refute anything that I have written or have written with East Bay Clean Power Alliance, it'd be nice to get a copy of that. It was embedded somewhere deeply in the consent calendar and voted on by the board. I'm not sure if anybody even saw it. But I just think that it's pretty ridiculous that an energy agency has a hard time working with community. And I think we need to move forward in a more positive way. And the work that we do at East Bay Clean Power Alliance is really to advocate for the needs of the environmental justice community and those that are most vulnerable and shut out of the clean energy economy. And EBCE has a very unique position to fill in those gaps with the local development business plan. And we need your attention and time in doing that, because that's the only way that our communities will be able to reap the benefits of a clean energy economy, actually create the jobs and the infrastructure that we need to have a cleaner, safer, and healthier climate. Clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia Dupre, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Ann Olivia. Alita Dupree, for the record, my pronouns are she and her. It's good to be back with you. It's been a while. Hope you can hear me okay. I'm going to speak generally and for myself. First of all, as a matter of housekeeping, I plan to speak on the long-term contracts. I will disclose to you up front that I am a shareholder in Consolidated Edison. So let me know if that might cause an issue with me speaking on that item, given that I own shares in that company. I don't know if that makes me a lobbyist or an interested party, et cetera. Let me know. I have been in the Bay Area lately, enjoying myself, and knowing that that East Bay Community Energy is with me. I hope a day will come when we can have municipalization, because then I will know that every user of electricity in your district is EBCE. Because I don't know if the hotels that I stay in and the businesses that I deal with, whether it be supermarkets, houses of worship, nonprofits, restaurants, etc., are using EBCE. I hope they are. I mean, you have a very strong, 97% uptake, I think. And hopefully they're all choosing renewable, and we want to keep the renewable going. I haven't been really following up on the nuclear issue, and I know that there have been some matters about nuclear getting in the mix, and I mean, it happens. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I think that we should continue our work of moving away from nuclear, and I believe very strongly that Diablo Canyon needs to be closed on schedule. It's time to move away from that and to build out more solar and wind and batteries and other things. Hydrogen is a good way to store some energy. I've noticed it looks like there are more hydrogen buses out on the AC transit system, and I really enjoy riding those. I see them quite a bit on different routes, but they'll put them out on the 36, sometimes on the 73 or the 21, which are, haven't seen them on the 57 yet. So that's a way that we can help in facilitating electrolysis of hydrogen from clean energy. And I've also been using some electric ride share. So the more we can do to help get the charging infrastructure in for our community. So I look forward to our meeting tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. No further public comment.
Mute. Thank you, Adrian. And just as a quick follow-up to a couple of those things, it's really nice to see everyone. Folks who haven't been around for a minute, it's nice to have you back. Blair, special thanks for bringing up the situation that's happening in Syria. Some folks here know that I actually had the opportunity to go out and do some work in Syria in some of the occupied territories and active ISIS zones, and have been through the refugee camps and whatnot. And they're a very intense situation that's happening right now. And so thanks for having your thoughts on that. And at the end of the meeting, I will actually make some announcements about some work that we're doing to help support folks over there. In regards to both the letter that Jessica Tovar requested be extracted from the consent and sent out, it would be great if that could also be sent to the members of the CAC, as well as the letter that Tom Kelly sent whenever it was prior to today that has not yet been distributed to us or the board. It would be great if that could go to all members of the CAC as well. Thanks for the public comment. We really do appreciate everyone's engagement. Like it's vital to have strong and healthy discussion regardless of agreement. Like this is how we have healthy decision making. The next item is approval of minutes from January 17th, 2023. I would be looking for a motion and a second, and then we'll see if there are any amendments to be made. So do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by member Lutz. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Harman.
All right, perfect. Great, we have a motion and a second. Cynthia, is your hand raised? Do you have comments to make?
No.
Oh, Cynthia, I am having a very hard time hearing you.
And just second. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Was that internet on my end or on Cynthia's end? It was all for everyone. Thanks, JP. All right, Cynthia, you're having a little bit of a connection issue. You might, if that continues, I'll just let you know, and maybe we'll find a way for you to call in for the audio as well. All right, is there anyone who would like to make any amendments or comments? Is there any member of the public who has their hand raised to speak on this topic, or did we receive any written correspondence prior to 5 p.m. yesterday?
We have not received any correspondence for this item, and there are no hands raised.
All right. With that, can we have a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Hugh.
Yes.
Member Liu.
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Member Lachlan. Member Taria. Member Cheka. Member Susan.
I'm here.
Yes, we record your vote for the for approval of minutes.
Thank you.
Member Carr.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez.
Yes.
Chair Eldridge.
Yes,
Yes, thank you. The minutes are approved.
thank you. All right, so the next item is the chair report. We'll switch this into a couple different sections. I did want to let folks know that at the last meeting, I said I would follow up with Tom Kelly, who's been expressing for a long amount of time a real consistent concern with the carbon load associated with our power, and to try and get a better understanding of the areas that he did not feel had been addressed by staff. Big thank you to Tom. He took a pretty substantial period of time to sit down and make sure that I really understood what was going on. And I will say I finally understand what he was saying and how it's, which is great. Some of the language wasn't coming through to me in the sort of smaller period of time that public comment can carry. And so I do have a better understanding of that. I'm looking into a couple other things, and I will reach out and follow the appropriate steps to follow up on that to try and get a clearer answer. And so just did want to let folks know that that had happened and that there is still motion in progress on that. At the meeting for the board of directors last month, which was held on January 18th, so the day after our meeting, We did have 3 new members sworn in for the city of Tracy, the city of Pleasanton, and the city of Livermore. I believe that Stanley Andro is not yet appointed. Is that, or at least at that meeting had not yet been appointed. Is that correct, Adrian?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if that member has been appointed yet?
Yes. Hold on 1 second. For San Leandro?
Yeah, for Stanley Andro.
Yes, a member has not been, the appointment has not been sworn in yet.
Great. Okay, so we do have, there is great sadness as I report this part, actually. The appointed representative for Alameda County is Richard Valle, who did pass, and it is a massive loss. And those of us who have had the honor of working with him are really feeling that loss. He is an incredible man. He has been a phenomenal supervisor. He is a fantastic poet who often used his skills to support motions that came forth that he believed in. And I don't know yet what is happening in that realm, but that was recent, and so I don't know if we will have a new member appointed from the county or not. Yeah. So other things that happened, the agreement with Google was passed and approved. We had several new staff members introduced. The long-term contracts that move forward for approval, it was an action item. It was passed. There's some updates that we're going to be talking about tonight. And there's a motion to support the negotiation for agreements for critical facilities, and that passed. And that's pretty much what happened at the last board meeting. There's a lot of folks coming in, and it's great to be meeting the new folks, and we will have some new members coming in too. So tonight's agenda is pretty heavy. There's very few things that are on the board's agenda that we are not discussing tonight. So we are going to have to be real conscious of time. There's 2 power purchase agreements that are on the board's agenda, but the rest of the items we are at least touching on here. So I'm going to ask folks to really be aware of the time involved and stuff. And with that, we will, so Cynthia, is your hand still up, or is it a new up? I think your hand's new up, so go for it.
Yeah, this is a new hand. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, actually it's much better.
Okay. So I didn't hear the comment about the county appointment because I was fixing my iPhone. And secondly, I know you'll be meeting with Tom Kelly or have met with him. Can you clarify, maybe not tonight, but whenever it's fleshed out, the issue about our energy versus PG&E? And again, I heard that our energy is, if I heard correctly tonight, 6 times dirtier than PG&E, which, brings some concern to me. So I'd like to be very clear about what Tom is discussing. So if you could bring that back when you have it clarified, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll definitely be following the process. There, a lot of the comments and stuff that have come up from the public are sort of related to like similar things, items that will be kind of bunched together. So we'll be working with staff at the right time to bring that back. Like, yes, absolutely. Thank you for your comment. And then, are there any public comments on this item or any members of the public with their hands raised?
There's no public comment on this. There are no hands raised, and there are no written public comment that I have received for this item.
Okay. All right, so the next agenda item is an informational item that will be presented by JP Ross.
And Olivia,
Yep.
about the board meeting, there was one item in the board that passed without, which was expanding the criteria for the LMI program. And it was passed without coming to the CAC for discussion, and was not really discussed at the board. But what it does is open the electrification program that's right now, or had been targeted for low to moderate income people, had broadened the availability of it. And I raised a concern, not as a CAC member, but as myself, that would probably cut down on the number of low to moderate income people that could apply, because the wealthier, more connected people will probably get a lot more of those involvement in the program. So I'm mostly concerned that it wasn't an issue that of that type wasn't brought to the CAC. And I see JPs.
Yes, which will be really good to be able to get a response there. And then I also have a response about the process, about what comes before us and what doesn't, and that'll be good for folks to understand. But JP, if you'd like to respond to that concern, it would be great.
Sure. Yeah, real quick. So the item that was brought and passed by the board allows Block Power to make our lower cost financing available to all customers in East Bay Community Energy's territory. There is a specific requirement in the loan doc, in the adjustment, that requires that does not impinge or reduce the availability of incentives to low moderate income customers. So the target of this program was always 60 low to moderate income customers, and we are essentially protecting that number, but making the lower cost financing available to anyone. So it allows us to actually market the program to everybody, because before we had to market it and then filter people out who may want to do energy efficiency and electrification, but not meet the income criteria, without reducing the number of low to moderate income customers who are eligible for the incentive. So there's an incentive and the financing. The only thing we changed was the financing. The incentive is still limited to low to moderate income customers. So as we discussed at the board meeting when this was raised, we clarified that this would not impact the number of low to moderate income customers who would be eligible for this program.
That is really helpful. Thank you. And then just so folks know, like the vice chair and I get a copy of the agenda, sometimes more in advance, sometimes kind of small window in advance. There's nothing that's negative in staff as a staff member for a different body. I will say that you really get the agenda out just as fast as you know what's going to be on it, and you don't always know what's going to be on it because a lot of factors there's a lot of factors that go into it. So when we set the CAC agenda, what we do is we communicate with staff and say, what are the highest priorities for you to get feedback on? Because sometimes folks really are like, these are the things we've been told that we need to do, like that it fits with our work plan, like the thing that the board agreed to, that we created, that staff use as their guidance for specific items to reach out to the CAC about. And then, or something that we believe is going to be really controversial, that we want to have a greater opportunity for public input and broader area for discussion on, especially looking at ways to reach out to our constituent groups. And sometimes we have to prioritize, because if we really want to have an hour-long discussion on something, we can really hit 2 things, right? That's what we can do, is 2. And that's only if we're real tidy on some of the other parts of the agenda. So we do the very best we can. Tonight's agenda has quite a lot of things on it, for example, so we have to keep our discussion shorter. When we know something's going to be there that affects us, whether staff is aware of it or we bring it to this body. And sometimes we miss things, but if something comes up, do just let me know. There's no malintention. But that's how that process happens. So staff doesn't determine what's on our agenda, we do. And we do it the best that we can. So Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Eldred. I think briefly, we got some points on Friday, late evening, and then we looked at what was maybe more relevant and like to report out, and we can just share that there's a couple things on consent, and some things we'll be covering, like Chair Eldred said. I think we want to maybe focus on returning back to meetings. I think there's something about travel reimbursement to those meetings, and there's some things specifically about community grants that might make more attention, but there are amendments to some contracts around energy. A treasurer's report, I think there's about making about $15 million there. I think there'll be more information about mid-year budget, as well as a contract amendment, and other contracts have been approved for energy purposes. So there's quite a bit of information there. I think they've released the agenda there on Friday at 6:30. If you also sign up for those agenda releases, you have a concern about something we should cover, we have to work together to get it on our agenda. And then I think I'm just getting new to the chair, but there's a lot of information comes at us. So I'm hoping if you sign up for those notifications from East Bay Community Energy, you can also receive that. Or Adrian, if you want to send out the agenda to the CAC, they can also receive content and feed it back up to Chair Eldred and CC me, and they can help work with the agenda and get it out to us, I guess, just figuring out the process. But this is always a work in progress, I think. Chair Eldred, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hernandez. All right, so I hope that cleared that up. Again, it's 6:46, so we're not doing very good on the rapid parts of this meeting. So with that, we're going to move into a community grants discussion. This is really exciting, and JP, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. Well, we will be brief. I say we because the first thing I wanted to do is introduce Heidi Ramirez, who joins us from most recently the Jim Joseph Foundation. She is our local programs reporting analyst. We're very excited to bring her on board. She's here. Hi, Heidi, and will be presenting this with me. So. Yeah, she's got some grant management experience, and so we wanted to raise the topic of the community grants that were funded in the last fiscal year. So if we can go to the next slide, Adrian. So just a little bit of background. As you may recall, the local business development business plan, I did identify opportunities for the community investment fund, which would allow EBC to invest in local strategies and organizational capacity building and development that syncs up with our programmatic and education and outreach goals. We have issued grants. So we issued the 2019 community innovation grants. which Councilmember Hernandez was a
are you
part
leaving?
of. And that
Okay,
was a
okay, great.
successful
Yeah. Okay.
issuance. I did include a slide on the last slide here around those community innovation grants, just for reference. We also provided about $1.3 million in COVID grants in early 2020 when COVID was exhibiting a strong effect on our community. We've done some workforce development grants and various community sponsorships. So we have been doing grants between our local programs team as well as our marketing and account services team. And then this last fiscal year in June of 22, the board did approve a $4.2 million budget for 3 years of community grants. And so that basically, we took some of the strong revenues that we had from volatility, the volatility experience last year, to put a considerable amount of money into a community grant fund. So next slide, please. So the budget that was approved was, as I mentioned, $4.2 million for 3 years. And during the meeting, the board directed us to consider kind of fewer larger grants, multi-year grants that really invest in community-based organization engagement and capacity building. The original community innovation grants were fairly small. They were $40,000. And I think we got some great results from those. But one lesson in that is, it's hard to go out to CBOs and ask them to do work that they're not already doing, and with limited staff. And so providing longer term grants with a little bit more money, I think, is, where the board was going with that direction, that could also invest in a little bit more kind of capacity building on the part of CBOs that we want to build partnerships with. So if we think about that dollar amount, so $4.2 million budget over 3 years is really like $1.4 million in grants per year. So $1.4 million in grants issued this year, next year, the year after. And just to kind of size these grants, if we're thinking that those grants would be a 3-year grant for $100,000, then those grants would be a cumulative $300,000 over 3 years. So kind of gives us the ability to do, say, 4 to 5 grants each funding cycle, each year, for 3-year grants. And that would total about $4.2 million. And so we're thinking, that's kind of what we're thinking about, sizing these solicitations and grants. And not every grant is going to be a 3-year grant for $100,000 a year. But that's something that we will work to develop. So that's one thing to consider. And then the other was that the grants will be focused on promoting kind of EBCE's programs in the 4 programmatic categories that we've really been working on: transportation electrification, building electrification, resilience, community resilience, and energy efficiency, as well as kind of 3 different programmatic areas, if you will: enrollment, workforce development, and education and awareness. So that was the spectrum of grant areas that the board gave us direction to fund. So there's a lot in there, and what we need to do is develop, in coordination with the CAC, how that's actually going to be rolled out. And so if we go to the next slide, we put together a very rough schedule. So this is February. We're at our Community Advisory Committee meeting. So we wanted to give you this update and talk about the schedule of kind of rolling out a plan, a community grant plan. So we'll take the next month and kind of develop an initial framework that takes those programmatic categories, as well as the goals of those, and thinks about it with the programs that we currently have in place and are planning to run, as well as a bit of a gap analysis. So some of these programmatic areas are quite mature, like energy efficiency is pretty mature. Solar and storage is a little bit less so. Building electrification, transportation electrification, very early parts of the maturity curve as we think about industries. And so that means that, you might need to do more education and awareness in some areas and more workforce development and programmatic enrollment in others. And so we want to kind of look at that framework and build up a bit of a straw house that we can come back to you with in the March-April timeframe to put together a work session where we can kind of develop a plan where we think about what are the solicitations, what's the order of those solicitations, the goals of those solicitations to issue some community grant requests for proposals and develop that plan. And then come May, we could present that to the board and then start issuing some solicitations thereafter. So that's a high level schedule that I wanted to bring to you today for info and light discussion, if you will, with the community grants that we've got, the budget that we have funding for. So that was one thing. The other is, as we were talking about this initially, we did kind of come up with an idea that has a short-term need, which is our induction cooking kind of education and awareness campaign. So you may know that we have a induction cooktop lending program that's quite active now. It's got a good amount of interest and we always want to stimulate more. And so as we were talking through this, we did identify that there's a great opportunity to partner with community-based organizations to help get education and awareness out about induction cooking by putting together a program of works to go to, say, farmers markets and other community-based events with to do like an induction cooking demonstration so that people can see the value of clean cooking. It's increasingly tied to cleaner air and lower indoor air pollution because so much science is coming out now about poor impacts, indoor air quality impacts from gas cooking. And so one thing we did think about was, we may run a little bit of a pilot, which would be one solicitation specifically for some induction cooking education and awareness and programmatic enrollment, because we can do education awareness and then get people to use our induction cooktop lending program. And so we may come back to you all and say, hey, let's put together this community grant plan. And in the interim, we'd like to put out one solicitation for this particular item, this induction cooktop lending education and awareness campaign. So that may come back in this March-April timeframe as a way to kind of test the process as well of getting something out in the market. And we'd love to have something underway. It's summer of this year, which is why we may want to put that one solicitation out there so that we can get a community-based organization partner on board for that education and awareness campaign. So that was it. That was it, the info item, and happy to take questions. The next slide is just a review of our community innovation grants from 2019. So we don't really need to cover that.
That's awesome. Welcome, Heidi. It is a pleasure to have you here. We're going to do this in sort of two parts. If there are clarifying questions from the committee, we can ask those first, and then we'll go to public comment before we have discussion or deliberation of any kind. And then we'll come back to the CAC for discussion and deliberation. And all right, great. So we will go first to public comment. Did we receive any written correspondence on this item, or are there any members of the public with their hands raised?
Yes, we received one. Well, Blair Beekman signed up for to speak at the meeting. Blair Beekman, if you wish to be recognized for 3 minutes.
No comment on this item. I'll just listen to others, what they have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have received, we have 4 hands raised for this item.
Great. 3 minutes is fine.
Great. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. JP, I just wanted to know where things are with the $15 million grant that is supposed to be used for switching out gas appliances, primarily induction ranges. It's February, and I thought by now we would have heard something. I was wondering if you could bring us up to date on that, please. Thank you.
Okay. Olivia Dupre, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thanks again, Chair and Olivia. Olivia Dupre, for the record, she and her. Lots of good things. I really like this idea of an induction lending library, you can call it, if you will. I actually have an induction cooktop unit. Countertop, I've had 4 of them over the years. You know, I get new ones that are one's better than the last one, and I got my first one in 2009, and I was using it just before in my solar-powered all-electric home apartment. This is a good way, not just with this, but the idea of being able to give people a chance for some real extended hand-on experience is very valuable. I've had people come into my home and they notice the induction unit. Kind of hard to explain it to them. And I could say, yes, it's better than gas and you get more control over it. But until you give someone a chance to actually use it, it's hard to understand unless you've done a lot of academic research about it. So this is a very good thing. And I am very sensitive to the issue of indoor air quality. And yes, I mean, natural gas does burn off some things that are not very good. And it's really scary when you smell unburned natural gas. I know what it smells like, though I've never been in a dangerous situation. But one thing that I have worried about is if you're simmering something very low and something could cause the gas flame to go out. And well, that's not a good thing, because then you get unburned gas coming into the house. It's fire hazard, explosion hazard. We don't want that for anybody. So how can we continue to expand this very important idea of decarbonization? For people to be able to have the health benefits and the safety benefits that I have in my all-electric home, and especially the thing I like about lending programs is it's a way to reach people in equity priority communities who may not have the resources or even the comfort to, quote, roll the dice on something that's very new. It's hard to adapt to things that are new. I learn new things all the time. So I look forward to us putting this into motion. It's a better way to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jessica. I have a similar question as Tom's, mostly because we had heard one of the many ideas for the $15 million from last year was to potentially swap out gas stoves with induction cooktops. And I'm wondering if there's a connection here, and if that same question, if that's the plan here, because we haven't gotten an update on where the 15 million is going. That's all.
There are no further comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Then with that, we will go to members of the CAC who have comments and questions. Nikki, was your hand up earlier? Yeah. Member Souza, if you would.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Apologize. My system's slow, and so am I. I'm not feeling very well. Y- yeah, this is great. I'm just wondering how we're looking at, or how EBCE is looking at combining these incentives with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I've seen some preliminary numbers, tremendous amount of help for both normal homeowners and double the help for low income or people meeting 80% or lower. Now it's up to the states, I believe, to dismember the act and also see how it plays out as far as, you know, all the little bits and pieces. But I was wondering, JP, if you could answer whether or not this is being taken into consideration for, say, the induction stoves, because you know, there's induction stove rebates or incentives, both with BayREN and the IRA. So you know, just plenty of money coming in, and you know, how can EBCE most help our residents to benefit in a way that isn't like kind of double dipping maybe with BayREN, or you know, focusing on other ways to use it. So just thank you.
Sorry, mute issues. Thank you very much. And we'll actually try and do all the things together and see if staff has the ability to respond to something at the end, but I am being semi-conscious of the time. Member who?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. JP, thank you so much for bringing this to the CAC. I think this is like a perfect example of how to leverage the expertise across this body. And I overall really agree with that movement towards larger multi-year grants for community-based organizations. That's just such a clear ongoing need in terms of ongoing capacity. My clarifying question is, when you, on that slide, the March-April work session, I'm curious, is that work session intended to be during the CAC meeting itself, or can CAC members work directly with staff between meetings to help work on that process? I, in my day job, co-design and develop a state grant program. So I see a lot of opportunities to try and embed some really good best practices for EBCE if staff are available and interested. And then my final comment is, it might be helpful in advance of that, perhaps via email, to just refresh us on what the parameters would be on some potential conflict of interest issues if we are helping co-develop the goals and solicitation plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Member who? Member Lutz?
Yeah, again, kudos to JP to get all this going. A couple questions. You're talking about grants that are larger and extend for longer term. Is there a potential to do this into a rolling program where the grants would be for 3 years, and when EBCE, you know, gets extra money for whatever reason, maybe the IRA stuff comes in that way, that another tranche of 3-year grants a year from now, 2 years from now, sort of trying to keep it rolling and keeping the funds flowing out to do all the good work. So that was one question. Another question was, these seem pretty well defined to existing programs and to, I don't know, existing categories. Is there anything like the innovation grant that are more blue sky that aren't tying people down to these particular squares in the matrix. And then a related question was, what level of community involvement, some of the active community groups, was there in drawing up the matrix, and what squares, what rows and columns in the matrix would the community want? So those are my two questions. And I think it's a great thing, and we'd like to see more of it. And that's it.
Thank you, Member Litz. Member Hernandez, Vice Chair Hernandez, sorry.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I think a lot of good questions here so far. I'm taking notes as fast as furious as I can. And JP, I hope you're doing the same. Part of it I appreciate when I first joined the East Bay Community Energy back in 2019, had fun looking at the applications, and they were a good start to really understand the need and the community efforts here through East Bay Community Energy to amplify our efforts. I understand the energy efficiency, the programs that were out there, the community awareness. I know there are 40,000, and there are, difficult to maybe do those grant applications. So it's nice that we're looking to do larger grants, which is great. Understanding what the community looks like. Are you going to put it out there, JP? How much are you asking for, right? The question will be, are you asking for 25,000, 500, 1,000? Or are you going to say, hey, I have $100,000 per year for 3 years. What can you do with that? So it's going to be the question is how you're going to pose the request for grant proposals to the community. And I guess the question that I think, remember who said, how are you going to involve the CAC? Would it be during these sessions, which we sometimes cover a lot of content, or you're going to ask for volunteers to raise their hand like I did, to come out and review those applications and then rate them and then recommend them to the board or the CAC. So it'll be interesting to learn more about your process. But this is good news that there's money to support the community, which was the intent of East Bay Community Energy, and I'm really supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you, and then I'll throw a couple more on there as well. Again, welcome. It is really wonderful. I know that you'd come to us before stating that you wanted there to be a staff member who could had more capacity and time to focus on some of these things. So it's really awesome to see what can really be a long and complicated hiring process. It's really awesome to have a new member join us, and we really are excited to be working with you. I did want to. So my understanding is that tonight, really what we're doing is introducing our new staff member and celebrating their existence. And then saying, all right, these things are happening, here's a general timeline, and that we'll be getting more information that's coming back. I would also like to put in for some concept around the innovation grants, because if community organizations are smaller and are working to develop an idea and see if it could get to the point where one of the longer term grants, like there's value in that too. And sometimes people won't have the history of maybe being able to, like, I do love the long-term grants, but it's also good to have some of the smaller ones. So I'm just curious if that is factored in there at all. And I'm hoping that with a new staff member, we will be able to revisit some of the concepts around metrics of success around our 3 pillars, social, environmental, and economic justice, are 3 equal pillars that are the foundation of the CAC and our community programs. And I'm also curious about the process and have some ideas that work on other boards that I'm on as well, and taking advantage of some of the expertise on this body would be fantastic. So that's all.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for anything else.
Nope.
Oh.
That would be if you want to do any responses to that, or just give us an idea of when those will go. It is 7:12, so we're gonna.
Yes, yeah. So I'm just grouping this up in my head so I can try to answer it succinctly. So I think on the process, we don't have anything set. So I think my proposal would be to work with the chair and the vice chair to ask is it something we would actually do in a meeting, or should we actually put together a special session? It's why we gave ourselves a little bit of time between now and planning to come back to the CAC to put together a little bit more of a plan. So I think, we should work on that, because the goal would be, again, we put together a bit of a straw proposal, and then, we work with you all to define with more clarity what that looks like. And so to the extent of, having some defined categories and the recommendations that we make some opportunities for innovation, there's a lot of room for innovation within these categories. And so I think that these are not set in stone. We did get some direction from the board to put some boundaries around this, but it's not set in stone. And I also wanted to be clear that though we define kind of these 4 programmatic areas, it doesn't necessarily mean that a community-based organization would need to get programmatic enrollment in one of our programs. That doesn't have to be just EBCE programs. There's lots of programs around the county that people can enroll in or get education about. And so as we define the community innovation grants pretty broadly around community benefit, I think we're thinking about this as a fairly broad category as well of community benefit. So that's something that we can work on with you as we kind of pull that working session together. I really appreciate the points, Councilmember Hugh, that you brought up, certainly around conflict of interest and process, and love to get some feedback on that. I think to the point that Councilmember Lutz brought up, we've got 3-year budget, $4.2 million. Let's make that work, and then see about adding funds after that. Right now, let's do that first, and then go from there. And lastly, around IRA and induction, we are constantly looking at funding opportunities, state, regional, national. We've brought, I'd say, 20, 40, $55 million in funds into the county through the efforts of our team, and we're also looking at how we can leverage IRA. So that's something we're constantly tracking. And it's an opportunity. That's different from the grants. The grants that we're talking about today are not going after IRA dollars, but to the extent that we can help to say clarify how a resident or a business could access IRA funds to do something, then that's an education and awareness and an enrollment goal. So if we can hit 2 of these goals out of 3, that's a win, right? But it depends on how we define success. So I think that answers the questions that were asked, and we'll follow up with the chair and vice chair about process and setting something up with you all.
Thank you, JP. This is really exciting, and we look forward to working with you on this. I just all the things that you bring us are wonderful. So thank you for your work and the clarity of vision that you had in this. All right, it's 7:16, so I'm just going to keep reminding you. We've got a couple more items. 2 of them sound like they're the heaviest ones, but really the 2 at the end are the ones that we really need to spend time on, which are the in-person and teleconference board meeting options and the travel reimbursement policy. These are action items that are going to affect our next meeting, so we do need to make sure to get to those. The mid-year budget is an informational item. It would be super weird to have a budget item on the board agenda and not have it come before the CAC as well. But this is an informational update on mid-year budget, so staff will be touching on that. You'll be able to get a broader overview, my guess is, at the board meeting, but it is here for us to talk about. And then the long-term contracts, just to cover the rest of the agenda, is a continuation from last meeting. And so I do just want to make sure that that since it's something we voted on last meeting, that it also has a chance to come here. And Adrian, are there folks in person at the
Yes.
Oakland Center, are they members of this body or members of the public or staff?
The California Public. I'm new in my role, and I just wanted to see.
I can't hear.
Sorry.
Um,
I don't know.
So I just see that a camera came on, that there are maybe 3 people in person there. So I'm just wondering, is this, if you could just let me know if this is staff, members of the public, or
this is a member of the public.
it's a member of the public. Okay, great. So we'll make sure to also ask if there's members of the public physically with their hands raised too, as opposed to just electronically. That's fantastic. Okay.
Yes.
So and are you also in that room, Adrian?
Yes.
Oh, good. So you'll be able to tell me if somebody physically has their hand raised. That's great.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So then we are going to go to the mid-year budget, and that is going to be presented by Jason.
Yes. Hi.
Yay, good guess. All right.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Okay, so the mid-year budget, basically, this is the check-in at the midpoint of our fiscal year. This mid-year check-in covers from the beginning of the year, July 1 of 2022, through the end of the calendar year, December 31st, 2022. And it also includes the updated projections for the second half of the fiscal year, which is January 1 through June 30th. Attachment, Ed, do you have a question? Sorry, Ed, your hand is raised.
Ed's hand's been up for a minute, but don't worry, go through the presentation and we'll do them at the end.
Great, thanks. So there is an attachment with this that provides the numerical table that I'll cover in some kind of summary detail here. First off is the revenues. Basically, revenues are electricity sales are 13% above what was budgeted, and this is due because the CPUC has increased the rates during this time, and so we will be, and has lowered the PCIA, so we will be collecting more revenue than we were originally budgeting. Uncollectible amounts still remain at 1.5%, and the other operating revenue that you see there is due to payments made counterparty shortfalls. Then moving on to expenses, conversely, energy costs have gone up as well and have increased quite dramatically, 33% above what we were anticipating. And this is due to higher than expected market prices that we've been seeing in December and January in particular. This, we're expecting this to continue through the next few months to this year. Operating overhead is 17% below budgeted amount, and this is due primarily with the positions that we were anticipating to fill have not yet totally been filled, and this has resulted in a reduced cost in all areas. Non-operating position, there is a 10% decrease in this area, and basically this is due to an adjusted development schedule with the new building rehabilitation. That's taken a little longer to get started than we had anticipated. And overall, this has resulted in about an approximately 26% decrease in our estimated net position from the budget approval in June of last year. Overall, this has no major fiscal impact on operations, this is our current best estimate of how the year will shake out. And obviously, we have another few months to go before we see how that actually goes. And so that's the entire report.
Thank you, Jason. So we will go to public comment. Are there members of the public with their hand raised either in person or virtually, or have we received any written correspondence prior to 5 p.m. yesterday?
We have not received written public comment. We have one member of the public with their hand raised.
Great.
Okay. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. Just a couple of things I'd like to point out, at least the way I am interpreting this budget. First of all, the income from electricity is, it's true that the CPUC did give PG&E the okay to raise rates. So it's actually, in effect, the PG&E rates have increased, and it's not directly related to the CPUC's approval of PG&E's rate request. And I think that's just, to keep things straight so that we know that the issue is with PG&E and not necessarily with the CPUC. The other thing that comes into play there, of course, is that our rates are continue to be linked to PG&E rates, even though our costs are not related to PG&E's costs. And as I've said in the past, that other CCAs, Marin Clean Power and the CCA operating in Monterey County are actually using a cost of service pricing for their rates, which completely delinks the relationship to PG&E, and it doesn't really matter what they do in some ways. It actually relies on the cost of electricity and the cost of operations. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, frankly, I'm shocked at the difference between what the anticipated budget for energy is and what it actually costs. And what you're not hearing is the reason that those costs have gone up so high is because natural gas prices have spiked. And EBCE relies on 40% of its power from system power, which is primarily natural gas. And I've made this point repeatedly, really to no effect, but in addition to the GHGs, we are in effect suffering from the rising costs of natural gas, and will continue to do so as long as our power supply relies so heavily on natural gas supplies. So, I'm also kind of surprised that staff are not pointing out that it's natural gas that's the problem here, and it's going to continue to be a problem as long as natural gas prices remain high. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Is that?
There's no further public comment.
Excellent. Then, is there any comments or questions from CAC members? All right. Seeing, all right. Vice Chair Hernandez.
Sorry, I think I agree with Mr. Tom Kelly about the prices and the concerns about linking them to PG&E. Recently here at home, it's like, how have the rates increased? So if there's a way to really understand what is our true cost, what's the margin we want to hit, versus just tying them to PG&E where everything sort of might be different. At one point, we need to separate ourselves fully from indexing ourselves to that organization. But what's really our true cost of providing services and trying to lower those energy bills, maybe more than 5%, maybe 20%, in my perspective. Is it possible? Is it a stretch goal? Can we do it? But still be a profitable organization helping out the community with such things as these grants. Being brief, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hernandez. Member Liu?
I just have a quick question. You may already mentioned about, I maybe missed. So we have a revenue increase. So is the revenue increase basically caused by the increase of the electricity price, or is it caused by we now have more members?
Oh, Jason, can you respond to that?
Yeah, so we have not yet, we haven't expanded very much since there's been a nominal turnover of accounts, but not a significant amount to show, this significant increase in revenues. But the rates that were issued to PG&E, correctly, thank you for correcting me on that, that they were issued to PG&E from the CPUC. The CPUC authorized PG&E to raise rates, and then they also lowered the PCIA for CCAs. And since we are, we do provide a discount to PG&E's rate, we are tethered to it in that regard, and so that is what has increased the revenue.
Thank you.
Not necessarily account growth, although we are expecting account growth with the inclusion of Stockton.
Can you actually also address the question of system power, because system power has gotten more expensive, and quite a lot of that is gas, and so I would just love to hear.
Sure, I'll speak to it as best I can. That's a little bit out of my purview, but yes, natural gas has increased, and quite dramatically, and that has been the source of the increase in the cost of electricity.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that up, Tom Kelly. That is it's a helpful thing. It's a helpful framing for us as we look here. All right, and Jason, thank you for the update. That was concise and comprehensive and solid. So 7:30, we're moving into long-term contracts. This is an action item. I also don't think this is a very long one, but is this Marie? Great.
Hi, Adrian, when you pull up these slides, will you please skip to slide number 7? I'm going to skip over the first handful of slides because they're the exact same slides that I showed last month and in, I think it was October or November. So just for a little reminder for everyone, the Power Resources team has been negotiating and executing contracts for a few purposes recently. One is to meet our resource adequacy obligations. Another is to provide more long-term clean energy hedges to our portfolio. And then the third is that we were ordered to do more procurement by the Public Utilities Commission. And so the two contracts that I will be seeking EBCE board approval on Wednesday, fulfill all three of those objectives. The first is a resource called Sun Pond. It is a 20-year contract for a solar and battery storage facility that is physically located in Arizona, but will deliver energy to California and will count as if it is for RA and RPS purposes, as if it was an in-state resource. It should be operational in April of 2025. The other contract is developed by Con Ed. It's an energy storage contract, but we are only procuring the resource adequacy from it. We do not get the full energy arbitrage capability that this resource can provide. And this is being developed in the state of California. I think it says in Tulare County, and it should be online and operational in June of 2024. For both of these contracts, both projects are larger than the size that we are contracting for because we are negotiating these deals with San Jose. We're splitting the capacity and the output from them. And then lastly, I just want to mention that the Con Ed contract did not technically come in through our RFO process. It was originated bilaterally, but it is desirable even as compared to resources that were offered in our RFO. Next slide, please.
Actually, can you just explain to folks, because I've gotten a bit familiar with where some things can be confusing. So our grid does actually take energy from Arizona in some ways, but can you explain how resource adequacy could be procured from a county that's so far away from us?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. well, actually, they're both counties that are so far away from us. Resource adequacy is, you can think of it as a fake product. It is a compliance product. It's not a real thing. It is a piece of paper that we have to use for compliance purposes. The goal being to demonstrate that we are making procurement decisions that contribute to the reliability of the state's grid. And so when any load serving entity procures resource adequacy only, we don't get energy from the resource. We don't get any environmental attributes. What we get is a commitment from this resource that it will make itself available to the California Independent System Operator, our energy market, and that this resource will make itself available during certain times of day, certain days of the week, according to the resource adequacy program rules. And those rules are designed to make sure that we have enough generating resources or storage resources online and connected to the grid for every month of the year, so that we can count on there being enough energy. So that's what RA is. And then
that was helpful. Thank you.
The location of it, if it's in California, it's contributing to the California grid. If it's outside of California, it has to have transmission and a commitment that it's going to be delivering energy into the state of California. Okay, next slide. This is a little bit more detail about the Long Road Sun Pond project. As I said, we're contracting for half of the solar and storage facility. It'll be a 20-year contract, and San Jose is taking the other half of the project. So it's a total of 85 megawatts of solar and 85 megawatts of storage. East Bay is only contracting for 42.5 megawatts. Next slide. Long Road is the company itself is fairly new, but it is comprised of a very experienced team. The CAC might recognize the company name because we also did an RA only deal with Long Road that I brought to the board and the CAC last month. So if it sounds familiar, it's because I talked about it about a month ago. They have brought 11 major projects online since 2019, and they have contracted with other CCAs besides EBCE. They have a deal with MCE that came online in 2020. Next slide. The Con Ed deal, as I already mentioned, was negotiated bilaterally. This is a 12-year contract. This deal, both projects will be using union labor. This deal is a little bit more farther ahead. It's closer to its development process, so they have a union contract in place already. Next slide. Con Ed is a very recognizable brand name. Everyone knows Con Ed, the utility company in New York, but they also have a renewable and project development arm, and that is who owns and is developing this project. So it's same family, not the same company though, really, as the New York utility. But the renewable and resource development arm has tons and tons of projects all over the country. And they have done many deals in the state of California, including PPA also with MCE that came online in 2018. Next slide. This is just a little summary of the deals that we've gotten board approval on and executed or are in the process of executing related to our 2022 RFO. The ones that I'm bringing tonight and on Wednesday are in black. The other ones are in gray. Next slide. Next steps in this process will be to finalize contract negotiations and then execute the agreements. We have update filings that we have to make to the Public Utilities Commission to demonstrate that we are on track to meet our incremental resource procurement targets, and we very much are on track towards doing that. And then our partnership with San Jose has been really productive, and we plan to go out to market knock on wood, in mid to late March of this year, 2023, with our next long-term resource RFO, and we'll be doing it in partnership with San Jose again. That's it.
Thank you. The clarifying for us again, the action, this is an action item. And so the action that you're taking the board, you're asking the board to take is
to authorize us to finalize negotiations and for the CEO to execute the contracts.
okay. So if we choose to vote on this tonight, which we can or we cannot, then we would be making a recommendation to support or not support staff's recommendation to the board for authority to execute the agreements. Before we go to questions from the CAC, let's go to ask if there are, is there public comment? Have we received any written correspondence on this item, or are there any members of the public in person or virtually with their hand raised?
Yes, we have 2 members of the public with their hands raised.
Are they in person or virtual?
Virtual.
Okay, it's 7:40. Can we make it 2 minutes?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Apologies.
Okay. Recognize Kelly A for 2 minutes.
Yeah, on the issue of the carbon intensity on the power content label of these things, if you just look at the California mix, look what they post on the internet, 38% comes from natural gas, 38% of the power. But if you look at PG&E, what I'm seeing is 9%. And then if you go to the EBCE power content label, I see 0% natural gas. You know, that's just a fictional number, but you're supposedly, we just heard a gentleman talking about high carbon. Well, you know, on your power content label, you're 0 natural gas. I'm very confused. You know, are these power content labels, are they completely fictional, or can we, you know, kind of rely on them? And then when we talk about this contracts, you know, you do not buy, when you're buying storage, you're not buying power, you're buying energy storage. Storage in batteries is energy, it is not power. So all we heard was, oh, we're buying this much power. That's that's economically impossible. You have to be buying energy storage. That's called, you know, megawatt hours or whatever it is. And we've got the description of these contracts is completely devoid of economic facts like pricing. We do hear, reading this report, it does say that EBC completed a robust analytics using internal tools, Sequant valuation platform, calculated the net present value of proposed projects, determined an optimal portfolio. These are great, you know, great kind of business school concepts, except I don't see the price of the storage that you're buying or the price of the RIAs that you're buying in, you know, in terms of with units that make sense. This what you're being asked to approve today is completely empty of pricing information. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Olivia Dupre, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thanks again, Chair and Olivia. Olivia Dupre, for the record, she and her. Before I render my comments, I reiterate to you that I am a shareholder in the Consolidated Edison Company, but I'm gonna speak unless you tell me to stand down.
No, it's just fine. It's just fine. You're not,
okay.
And a lobbyist could be here and speak as well. You're just fine.
Okay, so anyway, I mean, this is good work. This is part of the progress we are making. I really appreciate the explanation about resource adequacy. Electricity has a lot of interesting parts to it, and it's complicated, and that's why we pay all of you who are expert in this type of stuff to make it easy for me. So storage is absolutely important, and yes, this Alspa BESS is a small project, but they all add up. And yeah, I do think about local development, but we are part of this larger ecosystem, which is the California grid and the Western grid. And I'm 600 miles away from you, and I am dependent on this very large super regional grid, of which all these moving parts, when they work together, help to raise all boats, if you will. So compliance is obviously very important, and we are showing our good faith by taking these compliance measures, because these are ancillary parts in order to ensure that all of us, the people, are able to get the electricity. When I'm in my hotel in Oakland or Emeryville, that when I flip the lights on, they come on. So I think this is worthy of support, and we can get this work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I had a quick question for Marie. Marie, it's wonderful to hear you explain things. You're really on top of things. And my question goes just quickly. How did EBCE find San Jose Community Energy as a good partner for some of these PPAs? So yeah, I'll stop there. How is there a forum? Who makes the connections? Is it by individuals or through an organization of some kind? Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's no further public comment.
Great, and keeping aware of the time, the questions that I heard Marie involved, I think there's some confusion around power content labels and like system power versus direct procurement. And I'm sure you caught the rest of that actually. So if you want to take a moment and respond to what you can, that would be great.
Sure. I understand and oftentimes share the first speaker's confusion and frustration at the difference between the power source disclosure report and the power content label. EBCE does not directly procure electricity from a natural gas resource. And it's not even just that. We are not the owner or operator of a natural gas resource. So like some of our renewable resources, we don't own any of them, but we are the operators of them. If they were gas resources, those resources would show up on our power content label with the emissions and not just the emissions, with the energy from that resource type coming directly to us. As a speaker mentioned earlier in the night, approximately 40% of EBCE's electricity, I actually have to double check that number, but some large portion of our electricity consumed comes from system power. And that means that it's just general electricity that is on the grid. Well, system power has an assigned emissions factor tied to it. And so that's why we can have zero natural gas energy in our portfolio, and we can have emissions in our portfolio. It's confusing, but it's the way that the rules work, and so both can be true. I heard concerns and confusion about the lack of pricing and financial information in the board materials. That is intentional. EBCE as an organization does not publicly share any of our contract prices. Neither do the utilities. Contract price information is regarded as confidential in California, typically for 2 years. And after that point in time, the Public Utilities Commission is able to obtain and make publicly available contract price information. It wouldn't be in anyone's best interest to have our prices out in the public for everyone, because then, I've been coming to the board over the course of many months. If I told the board the price of the first contracts, by the time I was coming back with the last contracts, all of my suppliers would be wanting more money out of me, or maybe I could use it to try to push for lower prices, but it would weaken my negotiating point or stance. And then the question about how did EBCE come to partner up with San Jose Clean Energy for this RFO? It was through direct outreach from San Jose. San Jose Community Energy is another CCA, just like EBCE. All the CCAs do get together and we do talk and we look for opportunities to partner with each other on different work streams. And so, we've worked together with San Jose on projects in the past. And when they asked if we'd want to do a procurement with them, we said absolutely, and it's going very well. So we're going to do another.
Thank you so much for that. Again, we're doing a time check at 7:48. Are there other pressing questions on this topic from the board? All right, Member Hernandez.
I'll take my 2 minutes if I may, Chair.
Go for it.
Marie, thank you very much for the presentation. The only thing that pops up for me is like on slide 12, knowing about the ownership of these entities that we're partnering with and contracts, knowing who owns it. Do we have a supplier diversity element? Who's getting the jobs? Who's making the profits from our contracts? I don't know where that's at, but something I've thought about when I was on the board, understanding what does it look like for supplier diversity, inclusion, women-owned business or minority business owned or veterans. I think Salka Energy is one we procured energy with. I think he's a Latino-led organization. They did the gas power plant conversion there in Oakland. Just getting better numbers around that just help me understand what it looks like when we are providing resources to organizations that procure or do the resource adequacy, who's making those profits. It'd be good to know as we are a CCA community choice aggregation. Thank you. I'll give you 30 seconds back.
You're great. Mickey? Remember Susan?
I'm coming.
All right.
Sorry.
I don't know what's up with my camera either.
Apologies. The great questions. Great questions. I wish there were more local offerings, of course, inside California. And renewable, though, we're bringing more and more renewable. That trumps, in my opinion, any kind of other objections. Unless there's a high level of line loss of the power across the lines from long distances. The question I have is, given this, I know just quick numbers. Are there any quick numbers on how much of a dent this would make on our power mix? With these projects, these wonderful projects coming on. That's it.
Okay, I will I guess remind you that there's a little slidey thing at the top of my camera that closes it and opens it. That's great. That we're buying attributes from the power, like the resource adequacy, so there won't actually be line loss associated with that. Just so you know, we're buying a component of it, which is a very, very bizarre thing. It's a very bizarre thing. But Marie, do you want to respond to any of those?
I'll respond to the second question first. I do not have a quick stat available as to what portion of our power mix the energy provided from Sun Pond will be. I'll see if I can pull that up in time for the board meeting, but it will be very, very small. Our annual demand, even before Stockton joins us, is about 6.5 terawatt hours, and like a 100 megawatt, so just as a rule of thumb, a 100 megawatt solar farm often provides about 300,000 megawatt hours of energy, so per year. So just a fraction, and this we're getting half of 85 megawatts. So it's not a lot, but it helps. It's, every little bit helps. And then in response to the first comments, none of the providers none of the sellers that we've contracted with from this RFO are diverse suppliers, but we do require that they report their annual spend with their subcontractors. And that is actually a requirement under the CPUC's General Order 156. We will we do an annual filing to the CPUC about how much money we directly or second level indirectly spend with diverse suppliers every year, and that is posted on March 1st of every year. And then all of these contracts do have a commitment to use union labor.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, we can make a motion to support or not the staff recommendation, or we can not weigh in on this item. If someone would like to make a motion and we have a second, then we will vote. Otherwise, we will just move on to the next topics.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Shival, second.
Oh,
Thank you. So Vice Chair Hernandez moved, Member Swaminathan seconded. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
yes.
Member Hu.
Abstain.
Member Hu. Member Liu, excuse me. Member Liu. Come back to Member Liu. Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Member Lakshman. Member Talria. Member Checa. Member Souza.
Yes.
Member Carr. Member Carr.
Hey, Adrian, sorry, I'm back. Yes.
Great, thank you. Member Carr. Member Lukes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez. Yes.
Yes.
Chair Eldridge.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Excellent. All right, so there's two decisions that we really need to make tonight, and they're about the future of how we meet. So I'm going to ask this body if they are good with staying a little bit extra so we can make a decision this evening. Member Carr, there's a lot of activity happening. Okay. Can folks stay on long enough to do a vote on these things?
Yes, if we can be brief on them, yes. I'm running out of charge, but yes.
I am entirely for that. All right, so the person who's going to be making the presentation on the in-person and teleconferencing board meeting options is, I don't know who this is. Yay. All right, go for it.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Lori Liu. I'm an attorney and I work at RWG along with Intercalsa. And she's asked me to prepare this presentation for you tonight. So we're going to be talking about in-person and teleconference board meeting options after the state of California COVID-19 emergency has ended. And the board will be considering this item as well on Wednesday. And so the purpose of talking with you tonight is really to get your input before they make their decision on what the policy will be going forward. So first of all, so as you may know, Governor Newsom announced that the state of California, the COVID state of emergency will be ending at the end of this month on the 28th of February. And what that means is that the board of directors, as well as Brown Act committees, which includes this committee, will no longer be able to rely on Senate Bill 361, which has been used to conduct fully remote public meetings. As a refresher, the Brown Act requires that all meetings of a local agency legislative body be open and public, and that members of the public be permitted to attend and participate. And the Brown Act traditionally has long allowed for teleconferencing. However, there are some requirements for that to take place. So if we could just back up to the second slide. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline. So in March of 2020, the governor issued an executive order. That was followed by AB 361. And starting at the end, after February, starting in March, we will no longer be able to use that, which means that we will have to look at other options if we want to continue to attend remotely. So with the COVID-19 stay-at-home mandates and social distancing recommendations, it wasn't feasible to comply with the Brown Act's teleconferencing requirements, especially the requirements for posting of the agenda at each remote location, and also the requirement that locations needed to be open to the public and accessible. So under AB 361, a legislative body may meet via teleconference without a quorum of members physically present, without having to post the agendas at all teleconference locations, without identifying each teleconference location, and without making each teleconference location accessible to the public. And EBCE, like many other agencies, has relied on AB 361 to conduct meetings remotely since this legislation was adopted. So assuming that the governor acts on his stated intention to end the state of emergency at the end of this month, we will no longer be able to meet remotely pursuant to AB 361 because it only applies during a state proclaimed emergency. And in EBCE's case, this will impact not only the board, but also all Brown Act bodies, including the Community Advisory Committee. So at the next board meeting on Wednesday, the 15th, the board will be considering adopting a policy regarding meeting attendance following the end of the state of emergency. And so staff is looking for input from the CAC on how they'd like to proceed with their meetings. Staff has drafted a policy for the board to consider. And basically that policy would allow the CAC and other Brown Act committees to establish their own protocols, provided that they are in compliance with the Brown Act. Okay. So let's talk about the options. So option one, next slide. So the first option, which may not be appealing, is to return to in-person meetings. That means, you could meet in one location, just like bodies like this did before the COVID-19 emergency. And the locations could be the same for each regular meeting, or they could rotate from one location to another. However, since COVID-19 has happened, this agency has expanded its jurisdiction. And so while it's legally allowable, it may not be easy or feasible for staff to have this in-person option. Option one is straightforward, but it would require members to drive to meetings, possibly long distances, and it would also preclude members from participating remotely if they are not feeling well, if they're exposed to illness, or caring for a family member. So the community advisory group may decide that it would be desirable to have some ability to continue to participate in meetings remotely. So let's move on to option two. This is the traditional Brown Act teleconferencing protocol. So like I said, the Brown Act has long allowed for legislative bodies to meet remotely as long as certain requirements are satisfied. And they're laid out here on this slide. The location has to be identified on the agenda, has to be accessible to the public, provide for public participation. It must be posted in accordance with the Brown Act in advance of the meeting. And you have to have at least a quorum of the legislative body that are participating from locations within the boundaries of the agency's jurisdiction. So this option does remain available, and it would allow for members to participate from a number of different publicly accessible and noticed locations throughout EBCE's geographical jurisdiction. A little bit more about the traditional Brown Act meeting teleconference protocols. Next slide, please. So like I said, it would allow for multiple meetings with less than a quorum at one location, provided that there is a quorum collectively within the boundaries of EBCE's jurisdiction. However, there are a few caveats. Like I said, the posting of the notice has to be at all remote locations, which means posted at least 72 hours in advance. It has to be published at that location, and the public must be allowed to participate from this location. So, you know, you can imagine that if you've been meeting at your home, you might not want to go with this option if it's at your home, and you might want to choose a publicly accessible location. So one option along with this would be that the board could establish multiple meeting locations throughout the jurisdiction, and these could be county or city offices like City Hall. And these could easily be posted and made available to the public. And you could work with the clerks of the City Hall through the board members within your jurisdiction to help make those arrangements. So this option would shorten the driving distances. However, it would not be a good option if members still want to participate from their home, for example, if they're unwell, because you would have to, if you wanted to participate from your home, you would have to list those remote locations, post the notice, and make your home or wherever you're attending the meeting from publicly available. So next slide, we'll talk about option 3, which is the final option. So in 2022, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 2449, and this is an alternative to teleconferencing, and this is allowable starting January of 2023. So AB 2449 does provide an additional but very limited teleconferencing option. Similar to AB 361, it does not require agencies to follow the traditional Brown Act teleconferencing requirements. However, AB 2449 has its own requirements for noticing and conducting remote meetings. And while we were hopeful that this would provide some ability to continue meeting remotely, when you dig down and look into the details of this legislation, it's not a highly recommended option because there are a number of procedural requirements and it can be quite unfeasible for staff. So some important differences when comparing AB 2449 to the traditional Brown Act rules. Under AB 2449, you have to have a singular meeting space in the jurisdiction where at least a quorum of the body attends in person. In addition, the law strictly limits the circumstances and the frequency in which you can participate remotely. So under AB 2449, the members, a couple other requirements, the members have to disclose, next slide, please. They have to disclose at the meeting before any action is taken, whether there are any other individuals that are 18 years or older that are present in the room, and also the general nature of the member's relationship with that individual. Members must also participate both through audio and visual technology so that the public can remotely hear and visually observe them. So that means you can't turn your cameras off. And finally, under AB 2449, there are two specific circumstances where it is permitted, and only under these circumstances, and they are where there is just cause or emergency circumstances, and those are both defined in the statute. So next slide. Okay, one more. Sorry, I skipped ahead a little. So just cause on the next slide, please. Okay, so just cause, this is the first circumstance in which remote participation is allowed under AB 2449. And that is allowable in cases where you have a need for childcare or caregiving, or you have a contagious illness or a disability that couldn't otherwise be accommodated, or travel on official business. And to participate remotely for just cause, a member must notify the legislative body at the earliest opportunity possible, including at the start of the meeting, of the need to participate remotely for just cause. And that notification must include a specific or a general description of the circumstances relating to the need to appear remotely. Next slide.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are on a little bit of a time thing, and this is a fabulous presentation, but I can tell you that this AB 2449 would not work for our body, and having to meet in a single physical location would require a commute time of close to 3 hours last time I drove from Tracy to Oakland during rush hour. So 2 hours one way, 1 hour back is not, it's just not a feasible or environmentally responsible thing to do. So I imagine that we can probably say, because of the single location requirement, that this one is not, and staff doesn't like it either. Is that correct?
Okay, so then we'll breeze through the next slide then. So on the next slide, I describe what an emergency circumstance means, and that's where there's a physical or family medical emergency that would prevent you from attending in person. So you're right that in-person requirement makes it quite infeasible in cases where there's a large jurisdiction, geographically like yours. So on the final slide, I'd like to talk about what your options are. So in summary, with the end of the COVID-19 state of emergency, Brown and Board and Brown Act committees will no longer be able to rely on AB 361 to conduct fully remote meetings. So for the board, staff is recommending the traditional Brown Act teleconferencing rules be applied if the board would like to use multiple locations throughout the jurisdiction. And for the Brown Act committees, such as yours, staff is recommending that these bodies be allowed to adopt their own policies regarding Brown Act compliance. And so, that would give you the ultimate flexibility. And so if that's the route that you decide to take, then, at the next meeting, perhaps this body can enact a policy if they so choose to just discuss and determine where your meetings will take place and under what statute. Like I said, there's the AB 2449, there's the traditional Brown Act, and alternatively, it doesn't have to be a one or the other. It could be on an as needed basis, meeting by meeting, but it does make it very difficult for staff to keep track of. So staff plans to present this proposal to the board on Wednesday, and this is really just an opportunity for the community advisory group to provide any input, which can be considered when the board adopts its policy. And then we can come back to you next month with the proposed policy. And with that,
Great.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Can you go back to the first slide? I got confused between option 1 and option 2.
Sure.
And thank you so much. This is, it's a big thing, and I will strongly be advocating that we do not go meeting by meeting, because that would be terrible to figure out. But sorry, not that one, the option one.
Adrian's got the slides. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, option 1 is just how it used to be. That's in person in one location, no remote meetings allowed. And then option 2 was the traditional Brown Act meetings, which means that you could have multiple locations throughout the jurisdiction. Like, for example, since there's 5 regions for the community advisory group, you could have one in each city in which you and the members of the public are able to go, and it could be at your city hall.
Great.
And
So,
then, yeah.
I'm so sorry to jump in, but I'm really trying with the time. So the thing that I have heard as this discussion has spread out over the last month, so with the CAC's indulgence, I'm going to try and summarize the things that are important to us. If something is wrong, if I'm missing something, raise your hand. But if I get it right, just go like this. Being able to meet in multiple locations is really important. Having folks have the ability to telecommute in specific circumstances is also going to be, I feel, pretty important. I know that some folks are caregivers to medically fragile people and whatnot, so like that is an important thing to be able to do. Yeah, and so long as our quorum is inside of the agency, but we can establish quorum in more than one place, right? Like we could have everyone in their own, say, town hall or city council thing or something like that, expanding the opportunities for the public to also be able to participate in person. And the meetings will still be available online, and the public will still be able to engage remotely, correct?
Correct. If you have the meetings in publicly available places throughout the agency's jurisdiction, they don't have to have a quorum at any one location. It just has to be a quorum within the jurisdiction. And under those traditional Brown Act rules, no remote participation would be allowed.
Wait a minute. No remote participation would be allowed.
So when I say remote, I mean, so it would have to be accessible to the public. So you could have, for example, 5, they're teleconference locations. It would be like 5 in-person / teleconference meetings, but they have to be open to the public. They can't be in your own private home.
Sure, but unless you want to open your home to the public. But the public could still participate,
right,
from their home. So at the Transportation Commission, we're having very similar issues, right? Because it's 9 counties, so we have an even larger jurisdiction, sometimes over 3 hours in just one direction without traffic. So we're really taking a look at this, but I've seen that we have had increased public participation with the ability for the public to attend virtually, like online. So while the members there, they are going back to the traditional Brown Act teleconference meetings, they are continuing the webcast option for the public to be able to attend via webcast. And is like, we also want to make sure that the public can participate as much as possible. So will we be keeping the webcast option for the public with either of these options?
If that were allowed beforehand, then it would continue to be allowed, but I will double check on that for Wednesday's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Cynthia, did you have a question?
Well, my interpretation of, and I hope this is the correct interpretation. So we would not be doing the webinar, I'm going to call it a webinar at home, unless there was some emergency situation. If you did it remotely, it would be through a public or a county office that the members of the public could participate in. Is my my understanding correct on that, please?
So just to clarify, you're saying would the public be allowed to participate in person or remotely from that at that location?
Well, that's a good addition. Yes, I guess I'm asking that also.
So yes, it has to be a publicly accessible location.
Right.
So it could be at your city hall.
Right.
And it would be like how you used to have your meetings. And I will double check on whether the public can participate remotely. However, the members, you would have to be in person.
Right.
Yeah.
And could I be
at that remote location? It's a little bit of a misnomer because
right. Right. I couldn't do it, for instance, where I am now. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But you could like, I have posted remotely from a coffee shop in Boston. When I was on a work trip. So like you could do it in a place that isn't City Hall. You just have to follow some really complicated posting guidelines and have very good relationships with the coffee shop to be able to post an agenda on their door.
Right. So at least 72 hours in advance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little silly, but it's best if it's a public location.
Yeah.
Okay, Member Swaminathan?
Yes, I would also vote for option 2. I have been in Brown Act meetings from home where I posted the notice 72 hours before outside my home and have kept the door open. And that has satisfied that committee's needs. And as part of the notice, my address is posted in each of the other locations. So my address would become public and would be posted in all the locations. So I'm comfortable with that.
Correct.
Great. So before we take a vote, I do want to see if there are any members of the public with their hands raised, or if we've received any written correspondence. We will then be looking at someone making a motion, but we do want to go to public comment first.
There is no public comment for this item.
Okay, great. And then, are there any members of the public with their hand raised either in person or virtually?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Member Lutz?
Can we put are there other requirements for attending in person, like wearing masks, COVID tests before you come in, things like that?
We would be able to adopt our own regulations around that, and I believe that we would be working with staff to create some of those protocols for consideration at the next meeting.
Okay.
And thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and you'd be free to have your own procedures and recommendations. I'm not sure if they can be required in the absence of the jurisdiction or the state requiring masks or COVID tests. So that's something we can follow up on.
Be a helpful clarification. All right. I would love to see a motion for return to the traditional Brown Act teleconference meetings with the ability for the public to remain, the ability for the public to still be able to attend through via webcast, as is being adopted by other jurisdictions in our areas. Member Swaminathan, what were you saying?
I'll propose the motion.
Great.
And I'll second.
Member Landry seconds. All right. Yep. Motion moved by Member Swaminathan, seconded by Member Landry. Can we do a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Member Landry?
Yes.
Member Hu?
Yes.
Member Liu?
Yes.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes.
Member Lakshman? Member Tovar? Member Pacheco? Member Souza?
Abstain.
Member Carr? Member Carr? Member Lukes?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez?
Yes.
Chair Elder?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'd love to follow up with you on some specifics to really flesh out for folks. That would be really helpful afterwards. The last, well, not quite last, but the last item that we need to have an action item on is somehow disappeared from my agenda. It was a discussion on travel reimbursements, I believe. And that is being presented, and we're going to go because it's 8:22, so just as quick as possible would be helpful.
Thank you. Jason Bartlett again, thank you. So in accordance with, or in alignment with the returning to in-person meetings, EBC is also looking to institute a travel reimbursement policy for board, executive committees, the CAC, and any Brown Act subcommittee. The purpose of this is to allow members to seek reimbursement for certain travel-related expenses. This is including parking costs and any public transportation costs. The fundamental policy would be such that any member of any committee that is required to be at a place in person can, within 30 days of that meeting, submit a reimbursement expense request with the appropriate documentation, which would include receipts or any supporting documents to validate the cost. And there is no cap on this cost, but it is estimated that it should not cost more than $50, giving per meeting per person, given parking rates around the Bay Area, as well as public transportation costs in general. And this kind of sets what we expect to be kind of a cap, which shouldn't exceed more than $20,500 per year. And this assumes 100% member attendance in all qualifying meetings. And of course, estimated at a high rate of $50 per reimbursement. And that's really it.
Jason, I don't see mileage on there.
Mileage was not considered because due to the it's quite logistically problematic to account for mileage, given that there's rarely some sort of receipt or some sort of I guess validation of exact mileage. And so it was excluded from the validated costs for that reason.
So on other bodies, they have you submit your starting point and your ending point, and you turn it in. There's a monthly sheet. It would be really easy to adapt. Like if you have to go from your house to the city council building in your town, like if there's a closer option available, you should take that option. But if you have to go from your house to the city council in your town, then it's reimbursed at the federal, mileage reimbursement rate. In theory, this is in everybody's towns and it shouldn't be more than a couple miles, and it's like 60 cents a mile or something like that. But if people now have to travel instead of being able to do things from their home because of security, I think that is a thing that should be considered. So, and frankly, with the new Clipper cards, I don't know that you can get a receipt for public transportation anyways. Like you can't get, they don't give receipts anymore. You can't even get paper tickets at most places.
Yeah, I if there's some sort of other documentation that could be provided, we are required, by law and by GAAP guidelines that that some costs are not need to be validated and confirmed through some sort.
I'll just send you what other agencies subject to the same laws are. I can do that right now. Sure. Are subject to, because I believe that's over a certain amount, and they are definitely able to have these forms be the validation. Here's the start point, here's the end point. And it's this many miles, it's reimbursed at this rate, or I took max, so it's this part, this end, this is the fare for it, because they don't provide receipts anymore. It would also be helpful to find out in there if tolls, for example, they're moving to that charming all lane tolling in some areas inside of our jurisdiction and stuff like that. It would be helpful to know if those things are included.
Right. So my understanding is that I was given guidance to only include parking and public costs.
Okay. All right, well, I'll include my feedback on that part. Member who?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a mistake or not, or if I'm misunderstanding something, but mileage is included in the document that you're offering, Jason. It says expenses directly related to attendance includes parking costs, mileage at the IRS rate, and public transit costs. I don't know if that clears up the question from earlier.
Sorry, where do you see that?
Yes, it is on the top of the second page, third paragraph.
Yeah, that looks like to be a typo.
It is a very confusing typo.
I understand this was yeah, I see that is a very confusing typo. We will have to take that out.
Why would it come out? Like, this is a standard thing that is utilized by other Brown Act bodies in our jurisdiction.
Sure. As I said, I was given guidance to only include parking and public transportation costs.
Who did you receive that guidance from?
That was internal guidance. From
You said,
staff.
do you want to keep going? Oh, sorry, this is your.
We do not have the ability at this point to really. We don't have a method in place to track mileage, and it's considered to be problematic on our end. Now, you've raised a good point in that it may be problematic with public transportation costs, and you're right. I didn't even think that there wouldn't be, that there aren't any paper tickets anymore per se. But we do accept, other documentation other than just direct receipts. And I think that this will be up to, some sort of process of evaluation. And so I think that, that while this may not be a final version of the resulting policy, the version that I was ordered, or that I was advised to produce today, was to include only parking costs and public transportation costs.
Okay, I'm sending you now the what the Transportation Commission uses. We know this is acceptable in our jurisdiction, that it's valid and is considered accurate documentation. So you should have that shortly, and hopefully that can help your proposal moving forward if you are interested in this. Okay, that covers my question. Member Lutz.
You can get your activity from your Clipper card if you log in and go look it up. So it is technically possible. It's not very fun, but you can do it.
Great.
It seems like an additional barrier, and if the idea of this is to actually be able to encourage folks to participate in person as opposed to just look like it, it seems like we may be able to do a little better. All right, so is there any public comment that's been received on this item, or any members of the public with their hands raised?
There is no public comment for this item. We have not received any written public comment for this item.
Okay, great. Is there further discussion from this body? We are going to have to make a recommendation on this, and I'm not happy with this policy at all. Member who, can you try and help me come up with a no?
I'm so
No.
sorry. I've had a very long day. I'm sure many of us, I have nothing left in my brain. I'm so sorry.
I guess, I mean, I'm allowed to make a motion. I'd like to see this policy expanded to be representative of other Brown Act bodies in our jurisdiction and to incorporate mileage and I can include the form that we use in a body that's in our jurisdiction, and to include tolls or other required costs if it is necessary to reach the meeting locations. I don't think that's going to happen very often, but it should be covered if it is. People shouldn't have to pay to participate in civic engagement. So if folks like that, then we'd look for a second.
Second.
All right, seconded by Member Hernandez. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Don't forget to make public transit easier. You know, I got on at MacArthur, I got off at 12th Street. Here's the fare.
Right. Oh, that's a very friendly amendment.
Yes.
Okay. Seeing nobody else with their hands up, can you do a roll call vote? Just to summarize, the motion is to expand this policy to include mileage reporting as in accordance with other Brown Act bodies operating within our jurisdiction, include required tolls, and to make documentation for public transportation easier, which actually is also included in that same form.
Great, thank you. Member Landry. Member Landry?
Oh, did we lose her?
Member
Her
Hugh?
battery was running out.
Yes.
Member Liu?
Yes.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes.
Member Lakshman? Member Tavria? Member Pacheco? Member Souza?
Yes.
Member Carr? Member Lutz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez?
Yes, thank you.
Chair Eldred?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
All right, thank you. So well done, y'all. You just stuck on through a real long meeting. That was great. It is 8:36. The last item is staff announcements, including request to place items on future agendas. Again, if you've made the request in the past, we have it. I do have a couple little short things. The first is for the public. There is applications open right now for nonprofits to be able to apply for up to $2,500 through EBCE's nonprofit granting program. It's really exciting. If you know or work with folks who could benefit from this, please, take a look at it. It's on the landing page on the website. The second is really just if you have the opportunity to show up on Wednesday and say something or send greetings or whatever. This is the second time a member of our board has died, and it's really intense and incredibly emotional for people. He's a really good man. Supervisor Valle is a really good man. And it is a big loss to the county and to this organization. and his family has requested privacy during this time, so we are absolutely respecting that. But he's just a really good guy, and people are really hurting from his loss. And then the last is that I am organizing some efforts in support of survivors of the earthquake in Syria. And if people are interested in finding out more about that, that is absolutely not EBCE related business, but it is absolutely human interest business. And again, I had an incredible opportunity to go there just before COVID hit and spend some time out in Rojava in the ISIS occupied territories. And it was really a phenomenal experience, and the severity of what is happening there and the human loss and the infrastructure loss is really beyond comprehension. So if people are interested in supporting those efforts, then please do reach out to me. That is all from me. Any other announcements or, yeah, Member Souza?
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I too am feeling pretty sad. A lot of loss. I have a acquaintance of mine. I'm just going to send you some information. His name is Mark Hall from Revalue.io, and he's heavily involved with low-income energy efficiency improvements, job creation. There's a school in Oakland for workforce development. So he's kind of hitting some very good buttons. So I'm gonna send you some more information on that, and hopefully he can get on the agenda sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Vice Chair Hernandez?
Just want to make sure if you want to adjourn the meeting in the honor of Supervisor Valle and the victims of the earthquakes in Syria and Turkey.
Thank you, Ed. We will adjourn this meeting in the memory of Supervisor Valle and the survivors of the Syrian earthquake. And we will adjourn to Monday, March 13th, 2023. And we will be reaching out to each of you to let you know about meeting locations and whatnot as the state of emergency will have ended. So thank you, and we will see you next month in some version in person.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.